In this video, I'm going to show you the right way to put color over that Zenithal Prime and make you look like you're a better painter than you are. So in last week's video, which was totally in focus by the way, I explained to you different ways to Zenithal Prime the miniatures that you are trying to paint. And if you want to check that video out, pachow, right there. But basically, what a Zenithal Prime is it is when you prime a model a very dark color, black, some other dark color, and then highlight it from above with a lighter color to kind of simulate the light coming down from the sky and hitting the model. Because the models are so small, you have to accentuate the highlighting and the shadows. You can't just depend on the lights in the room or whatever. You need to kind of pop that a little bit more to pop out those details in such a tiny little miniature when you're looking at it from a distance. So I showed you how to use an airbrush, which is my preferred way usually. But you know, not everybody has an airbrush or a place to use it. Spray can, aka rattle can, and I talked a little bit about that. And then of course, dry brushing with a big fat cheap makeup brush. And so I showed you all three of those different things and what the models look like when they're done. Now a lot of people ask, why am I bothering to paint this model in this fashion if I'm just going to paint over it once I start putting color in it? Well, that's the trick, isn't it? The reason that you go through this, frankly, extra step, but not much of an extra step, right at the beginning is because then it helps your models down the road when you use the right paints over the top of that black and white or whatever color, lighter and darker color fade. What you want to do is you want to use transparent colors, contrast colors from Games Workshop, washes from Games Workshop or Army Painter, or pretty much anybody else who makes washes and things like that, glazes, stuff like that. There are a lot of different products out there that you can use that are transparent that will allow you to take this basically black and white looking miniature and turn it kind of colorized, right? Like they used to do kind of back in the 80s and 90s when they tried to colorize black and white movies, and it worked sometimes and didn't work other times. Well, in this situation, it's just a speedy way to really get your model from being black and white values to now color with lots of different values. Makes it look like you didn't just paint the pants blue and the skin color. You now actually have some highlight and some shade and some this and some that. And it's very simple, and I'm going to show you right here on the three models that we used from last week's show. So I decided that this model, this Chaos Cultist, is going to be very dark skinned, and I wanted to show my favorite way for doing very dark skin, and it's actually just to use Wildwood, which is a contrast color from Games Workshop. And when you put that directly over the black and white type Zenithal, you still get a little bit of highlight, and you get a little bit of shadow, all within that very dark, not quite opaque kind of color. It works out very well. And the important thing about it in this first step is to just make sure not to get it on the other colors. In normal situations, when you are using predominantly opaque paints, the reason that you start from the inside out, meaning you're painting the skin, then maybe you paint the shirt, and then you paint the hoodie, that kind of thing, is so that it's easier for you to cover up mistakes. If I get skin tone on the shirt, I'm painting the shirt next, so I'm covering over that. And if I get shirt color on the hoodie, I'm painting that next, so I can cover over it. You can cover over it if you're using, opaque colors. And I did a video about painting in that fashion as well. Pachow. But when you're working with transparent colors, you need to be a little bit more careful. They're definitely speedier, and they give you that kind of cool fade and that highlight when you do the proper, Zenithal stuff, but you do have to be a little bit more careful and try not to slop it around too much. But it really kind of turns out nice. It's a good, great, I think, dark skin tone, and we're going to highlight it up a little bit later towards the end to kind of make it a little bit more natural. Now, these Chaos Cultists are wearing, frankly, they kind of look like cargo pants, but with a couple of extra tubes. I mean, I don't own any cargo pants, but I own a lot of cargo shorts. None of them have external tubes, but that's fine. So because I'm thinking cargo pants, I'm thinking military pants, so therefore I'm thinking Militarum Green, another good contrast color from Games Workshop. I'm going to go through mostly contrast colors on this guy, but there's a lot of different options out there you can use. Contrast colors currently, probably some of my favorites for working over the top of Zenithal. And again, it's a very simple process. It's just trying not to get it on the boots, trying not to get it elsewhere, just putting it in there, putting it on, I don't want to say thick, but also not thin. I'm definitely taking it straight out of the pot and putting it directly onto the model. And you're going to see a little bit higher contrast, obviously, with the dry brush version of this versus, say, like the rattle can or the airbrush version. Those are going to be a little bit more subtle. The dry brush, but it just by default kind of gives everything a bit more of a graphical feel. This Militarum green is not as opaque as the Wildwood was, so you're going to maybe notice a little bit more between the contrast between the high and the dark. But it still works out quite well. Important thing, you got to shake. Militarum green is one of those colors from contrast you just got to shake the heck out of. You really got to go to town on it because it settles, and you really need all that stuff all mixed up into the mixture if you want the whole contrast thing to work right. Now we're going to work on the boots, and the boots kind of have these sort of chaps, kind of a situation. There's like a thing around the ankle, and then you can see the boot sticking out. But we're just going to do the whole thing in snakebite leather. Again, a contrast color from Games Workshop, probably my favorite, or at least one of my top 3 favorite contrast colors from that line. It is like you use it on pouches, use it on holsters, you use it on basically anything. Boots, it can work great on that kind of thing too. I did a video about my thoughts about the contrast line, and it was about a year after they came out, Pachow. And I can tell you right now that this is one of my favorite colors. Wildwood's another one. I have a tendency not to use the colors I don't like. Strange, but true. At some point, I'm going to probably add a little bit more wash to the actual boot part to kind of keep that sort of ankle chap sort of thing, I think they call them chaps. No, not chaps. Spats. Spats is the word I'm looking for. This guy's got spats, not chaps. That's a totally different model altogether. And I'm going to probably try to darken up the boots a little bit with some wash. And you can put transparent washes over the contrast colors and things like that as long as you just wait for them to dry. Now, to not make the model too crazy colorful, the middle part, the torso, being both the front part and also the weird backpack with a fan on the back for some reason. I don't know what kind of thing's going on back there, but that whole part we're going to do in Basilicanum Gray, another contrast color, and it is basically a dark gray, but not too dark, a little cool. It's a little cool, not a warm gray. And honestly, like on the dry brushed model, it's barely going to change the look. On the other two, it's definitely going to darken them down. But on the dry brush model, the torso parts were probably the parts that were hit least by the bristles, and so they were already pretty dark. So, you could even skip it if you wanted to, but you throw it on there, it kind of helps to bring everything together, and it looks good. But it's just a very simple, quick, try not to get it on the other parts, and then we're going to do some fixing on it a little bit later. Now we're getting almost to the end, and I decided I wanted a little bit more color, so I'm going to use on the hood that covers all these cultists, Leviathan Blue, which is, again, another contrast color. Maybe you're seeing some sort of a pattern here. I'm a big fan of using contrast color over black and white Zenithal, and if you take anything away from this, it should be that. Use contrast colors over black and white Zenithal. It looks great. Washes do really well too, but anyway, the contrast colors are very interesting. I'm very much looking forward to the new speed paints, which are basically kind of Army Painter's answer to contrast colors, which will be coming out in 2022. I'm looking forward to those. I just got some samples in the mail like yesterday. Anyway, so yeah, the whole point is that we're using, again, a color. This is a very dark blue. It's not ultramarine blue, which is a color that I don't like. This color I do like. First of all, it does not get so weird and chunky in the bottom, and it's just, I don't know. Overall, this is a nice color. I like it. And so I wanted to have this be kind of a nice blue sort of look on this to give it a little bit more interest and not make them too colorful. But as I'm done with this part, I do think they maybe seem a little bit too colorful. So at this point, it is now time to tie the models together. And when you look at the three of them, they don't look, in my opinion, very different. You know what I mean? When you're looking at them previous to the paint, they did look quite different. Now, you can still tell them apart when you look close, but they're really pretty good. And now to kind of really tie them all together, it's a very simple dry brush of, I like to use a color called Filthy Cape by the Army Painter. It is not a middle gray, but a little bit lighter, but not too light, and it's a little warmish, but not too warm. I don't know what it is about it, but it's become my favorite color for, I need all of this to sort of tie together. Now, I could go through and dry brush a little bit of a lighter green on the pants and a little bit of a lighter blue on the hood and a little bit of, all that kind of stuff. Or I could just take the same color and sort of dry brush it over everything. And again, if it's a gray like that, it's going to sort of act as highlight for each of the different disparate colors across the entire model. And it's very simple and works quickly, and it makes a very big difference in my mind. When you look at the finished models, they're going to look a lot different than you expect from the step when we got done with predominantly the transparent colors. Once we get that dry brush done, we're also going to do put black Templar on the gun, and then later on we're going to dry brush the gun with a bit of silver to give it kind of a, like it's a black gun. Guns have a tendency to be dark metal in some fashion, and then you just throw a little dry brush of silver on there, which is not probably realistic, but it gives the idea to people, oh, this is a gun, because they get that kind of metallic sheen through the black. And the black Templars are great. Again, contrast paint just very quickly. It's a very fluid paint, very quickly does everything it needs to be done to the gun. So then you just add some silver to the bayonet, and you do a little bit of touch up here and there. Some silver spots, you know, like on the little weird chaos symbol down on his elbow. Maybe you do a little bit of work to the backpack thing, and just a couple other spots here and there. Throw a little extra wash on the boots, but not the spats. Again, don't touch the chaps, as there are none. But, you know, then you paint the bases and throw a little wash on them, dry brush the base, paint the rim, and boom. These models were done, I did them last night, like, really fast, and I was filming while I was doing it, which slows you down, and they went by real quickly. So the concept of taking a little bit extra time in the beginning to prime and to do the Zenithal prime and pick the one that works best for you, whether it's the airbrush, whether it's the rattle can, whether it is the dry brush with the big fat makeup brush. Figure out which works best in your situation, which kind of result is best for you, and then go from there. With the dry brush, you're going to get a very high contrast, as I mentioned before. And even with the transparent colors that you're putting over it, it's still going to stay kind of high contrast. The airbrush version is a lot more subtle, in my opinion. I have a tendency to like that preference, but I got to be honest, I'm going to maybe start to do a little bit of a hybrid where I do my black and white Zenithal with my airbrush, but then I go back with a white paint, maybe do a little bit of highlight with the makeup brush before I start putting the color on there to just pop those extreme highlights out even a little bit more. The rattle can version, because it's so much brighter overall, you can definitely tell the difference, and it really brightens up all the colors. You know, the dry brush or gray kind of helps, definitely. But beyond that, overall, this is the fast way. This is the speedy track to get models done. Again, like I said, these three models, while I was filming last night, I painted these guys, I don't know, maybe it took 2 hours. And again, that was with stopping a lot and having to set the camera and do a bunch of stuff and things like that. You should be able to crank through small groups of models like this that are already pre-Zenithaled using a lot of transparent colors very, very quickly. And then you can go back and get as fancy as you want and touch up all the little bits and the pieces and things like that. But if it's a whole bunch of cultists or a whole bunch of army mans or a whole bunch of monsters or a whole bunch of zombies, going through and touching up every last little thing is not really super important, especially when you have a horde of models to be pushing around on the table. This will speed that up, but still make them look good. So go back if you haven't already, check out that video where I talk about the 3 different ways to Zenithal. Do that, check that out, and then use these results to get yourself, I think, some really nice looking models. And it can get you more models on the table more quickly that will still look good, actually possibly better than you've been doing in the past. And it's just a fun, easy process. Doesn't take that much work, and it'll get you stuff that you like to look at while you're playing.